You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, people-centric leaders. This is Stephanie Anderson, and today we have an interesting story to bring to you. I heard this story recently and immediately thought, oh my gosh, I want our team to talk about this on the People Centric Podcast. So you may have heard this before, but it's where the world of Ferrari and Formula One meet physician leadership. And I am proud of the alliteration I just did. So a little story today, but before I jump into how Formula One helped physicians, I have with me on the podcast Diana Royalty and Philip Herzog. So I'm excited to tell this story and hear your reactions.
I cannot wait.
No.
We'd buckle up, but Formula One, really ready to put the pedal to the metal.
Pedals. There's so many car puns.
So many car puns. And maybe we should just give a content warning is that if you don't like car puns, we might do more of them.
Let's get this show on the road.
Okay, so the story is, there were a team of doctors in the UK many years ago. I think this was in the early 2000s, who were working in the neonatal intensive care. Okay, so if you're not familiar with that medical term, that means really, really little babies who unfortunately are need some medical care, need some help. And a lot of these babies needed critical surgeries right when they were born. So obviously you have this team of unbelievably caring physicians to work in that type of pediatrics. You've got to really probably love kids. I would hope you really love kids. And so they're doing these surgeries on tiny babies. And unfortunately, as they're transferring the babies out of the operating theaters back into standard care, that's when they were losing the most lives. They were watching their own data and understanding that was the moment when they were most likely to lose a baby, is actually not in the operating room, but in some of those transfers. And so they knew their team was struggling. Those handoffs felt really chaotic. And so their team put a lot of time into trying to figure this out, right? Like, as you might, you're literally trying to save more lives. But the problem was their team couldn't figure it out. They tried lots of different things and were not having success. And then one day, and this is where I might get some of the specific details just a little wrong. One day, one of these doctors walked into the room and was like, has anyone ever seen Formula One racing? Which, if you're not familiar with Formula One, I would say go check it out. We're a Formula One watching household, and it is pretty spectacular what they can do. But they said specifically, have you ever watched a Formula One pit crew? And this is where we all might be familiar. If you see this high-speed racing car come into the pit, and in seconds, the tires are all changed. They've redone air. They've changed engine things. They might even be changing pieces of the vehicle. And they're doing it in seconds, like literal seconds. And so the physician said, what if we brought in a Formula One pit crew to evaluate our process? Which, as you're hearing this, you might be saying like, no way the hospital went for that, because what do Formula One pit crew people know about neonatal surgeries and care, intensive care? They don't know anything. But they somehow convinced their administration, we need to bring in this pit crew. And the pit crew watched their process. And after just watching the process happen, the pit crew essentially said like, yeah, we know nothing about medicine and can tell that you suck at this process. What they saw was that the transfers were really noisy. They're uncoordinated. It was not clear who was leading the transfer. They're reaching over each other. They're talking over each other. And so the Formula One crew said, here's how we do that as a team, and here's how we execute it in seconds. And where this story is really cool is where it ends is those doctors and providers were actually able to adjust their processes. And now, not only did they save more lives in their hospital, some of those processes have become a gold standard internationally for how neonatal care is done. So I just thought that was such a cool story, but it made me think about our team, our clients, organizations that we work with, and say, like, what do you do when you have a problem that you just can't crack? Like, we just can't solve it. We've tried different things, and we're not figuring it out, because some of you listening might be able to bring a Formula One pit crew in to look at your stuff. And if you can and decide to do that, please call us. We would love to be there and see it happen. But for most of us listening, my guess is that, like, that might not be something that's financially feasible, or you might think my leaders would never go for me bringing in some random outside perspective and showing them all of our company's secrets and dirty laundry. Like, they just won't go for that. So how can we take maybe from this story example and apply it to our teams? And how do you actually get unstuck when you have to solve a problem? So I will open the floor to our team for this discussion.
Man, it's such a cool story. And I keep thinking, like, if I was a surgeon and someone came to me and said, we should bring in this pit crew, I would look at them like they were crazy. I would look at them like they were crazy. Because what is a pit crew on cars going to teach me about surgery in a neonatal facility? So the fact that they even had this foresight to be like, oh, they could figure something out for us is incredible. And I don't think that happens very often. So I agree. Super impressed by this story.
I agree. And I think what you're pointing at there, maybe a little bit, I'll say it directly, is like sometimes our egos really get in the way of solving problems, because if we believe we are the expert in solving this, then we don't learn from other people.
It's so true. I actually get this way about the stuff that we do, right? I'll be like, no, I'm the expert at strategic planning. I'm the expert at communication. I'm the expert at business operations, right? Like, I know what we do, and we do it better than everyone else. And I genuinely believe that we can do it better than anybody else. But I think if I thought that we couldn't get better from there, that it would really hinder us. And so the ego does play a role in problem solving every time.
I love what you said, because if you are an expert and you can say something like, we can do this better than anyone else, it really could be a double entendre, or like the double meaning of maybe you already could do it better than everyone else. But if you are the best at it, then you also could find out how much better could be. And I think that's where we have some people. I love when we work with quality teams. Quality people will say, like, it can always be better. And then, like, the get it done, execute, make some big money people are like, doesn't need to be better. It just needs to be good enough. So I love that the story really involves all of that. And Steph, your question, who is your pit crew right now? If you're listening to this podcast, hello, we are your People Centric pit crew. The three of us here. You're a part of this pit crew. But where else can you go to find what I would say? It doesn't always have to be in your industry to find great ideas and great solutions. And a physician who's open-minded enough to look at the world around them, like I think that's someone who would have found the answer, whether it was with a pit crew or somewhere else, because they were looking for a good solution to a really big problem.
I love that you said that, Philip, because I think it does frame, like, why are you trying to solve this problem? And is it like, I'm trying to solve it so that I can prove I know more, or I could do more, figure it out? Like, is there ego involved in why I'm the one that has to solve this problem? Or am I just committed to having the problem solved, which means I am probably open to other people throwing ideas and inputs and things out there. And I think that's what our team will see where people really get stuck is they start saying like, I have to solve this problem, or they might even do the royal we, like we must solve this problem. And they point at their team or key leaders around them. But in some ways, like just thinking about it that way can hold you back because it's like, no, are we the ones that have to solve this problem? Which might mean we don't solve it because we might not be able to figure this out. We might not know the solution. We might be too ingrained in our own product or service to see outside of it. But if we can change that narrative, like you were saying, Philip, to like actually like our commitment is to solving the problem, whatever it takes.
Yeah. And I think there's even a step before that, right? You mentioned early that this team saw the data and saw that there was a problem where I think they could have easily been a team of people who were like, that just happens, right? Babies die. We're in we can't save everyone, right? I think they could have easily said, there isn't a problem here. But instead they said, no, we think there is a problem and we do think it's solvable. And so I think this team was already in a good headspace to like bring in a pit crew, right? They were already thinking, let's make it better. Let's get even better than we are. I'm sure they were all awesome surgeons and awesome nurses and awesome doctors and like really passionate about what they do. So I don't think it was like a skill set problem. I think it genuinely was like we have to think about this differently. And they were already there. They were already like ready to think about it differently. So then when somebody said, let's bring in a pit crew, it wasn't immediately shot down because psychological safety and ego and all of those things were already open to that experience and to saying like, we are going to solve this because we identified it as an issue first. There was like a moment where we identified it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I like how you framed that. And maybe we can talk about like, so how do you frame a problem when it's not life or death? Because the one thing I'll say about using this example is we are literally talking about saving lives, and not just any lives, babies' lives. And like everyone on the planet, I think, is going to get passionate about solving that problem. But like, what if my problem is not a matter of life and or death, includes no babies or people? It's just like a process is broken inside our team, or this software isn't working how we thought it would anymore. Like how do you frame a problem in a compelling way when I don't have life or death on the table, and not everyone might care about my problem. Like, right? Like everyone cares about this problem. This was a big problem. And I'm sure everyone at the hospital and really our whole world cares about saving lives. But yeah, if my problem is not life or death critical, and I know other people maybe in my organization might even say like, that's not really a big deal. What might I do to frame that, to your point, Dan, like what data should I think about pulling? Who should I talk to about my problem?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, especially as a small business, right? I don't deal with life and death most of the time. It is not life or death. It is just like basic problems, right? But I will say that every time I start to coach someone on solving problems, there are two things that come up. We need more money or more resources, right? Like those are the two things that constantly pop up. Like, well, I would like more money, or I would like more time. I would like more resources, more whatever it is, right? I want more of things. And so I think if you can frame it of like, this will get you to that, this will get you more time, this will get you more money, this will get you more efficiency, this will get you a better headspace, right? If you can frame it in, it's going to save you time or money, everyone's going to listen. I think that's when people start to listen. And almost every problem, if you can solve it, will get you more time and more money.
I love that. I was going to add, I think, we have a high potential program. We train in a few different places. We customize it with them. And a story like this, there was someone in accounting who raised her hand and said, I have this project I want to work on. And it was basically her passion behind all the random financial questions she gets asked every day. She's like, it interrupts my day all the time. And it's not just that nobody knows how to use the system. I don't even think they know how to read a spreadsheet, right? The way our spreadsheets are. I'm always answering these little questions that are stopgap solutions and not actually helping people find a problem themselves. So like that resource, I think one of those resources, Diana, is also just the ability that I can solve more of my own problems first. That's a huge problem. And when our team talks about things, the three big, huge pieces, I'll start with P, that motivate us: play, purpose, and potential. And I think sometimes the problem could just be not that all of work is playful and joyful and fun, but it could be a problem of we're super slow and bad at this one thing because we candidly hate doing it. Maybe we won't make it fun, but maybe we can diminish the amount of drag and hate for this one problem. We can rally behind that if it's not directly making us more. And the purpose, like, here's our why. We want to make more money. We want to have more control. We want to have better systems and resources. Or the potential, like, we are already the best. What if we could be better? We see the big return here going back to the purpose of it. So I love your examples tying into all of those.
Yeah, I think those are great ads. And I like what you both are pointing at of like, how do you tap into maybe someone's like more motivation for why we should solve this problem? My other wondering was like, okay, I think one thing that this story highlights is the power of having like an outside perspective on something. And that was another question I wanted to like pose to our team was like, how do you get outside perspective if that is not something that you organizationally do, or you feel and or know you would receive pushback for that? And I ask this because frankly, we work with some clients that have like really proprietary processes or products or systems. And so bringing in someone from the outside to observe you doing your job might be a really big deal. Or maybe it's just that like your leadership's just really kind of not open to that. They just think, no, like we've got enough amazing, smart people here. We don't need to spend the money to do that. Because they didn't talk about if they had to pay the Ferrari pit crew to come in. I'm sure they did, flying them from Italy. I'm sure there was an expense for this. And so I'd love for us to maybe talk about some thoughts or ideas of like, how do you gain maybe that outsider, quote unquote, perspective if you can't bring in someone externally?
I love it if you could bring in someone, that's great. But I also think it's a barrier, right? That not everyone's going to be like, yeah, sure, come into my company, poke around, no problem. And so, I'm always open to bringing someone in for us. But since I don't want to disrupt our team all the time and do that all the time, I'm constantly watching how other companies are doing stuff. And so like I take a lot from my husband. I'll be like, oh, how did you guys do that? Right. He works for a big company and I'll be like, hey, how did you guys do that? I'll ask my friends, I'll be like, hey, we're going to go in and do this process revamp that I know you do similarly. Bridget, how do you do that where you are? Right. How do you do that for a nonprofit? How do you do that for she works at a library foundation. Like, how do you do that? Right. And so I'll just ask questions of people that I know and admire and trust. And they'll tell me, they'll just tell like, oh, we do this thing and then we bring in this person and then this is our process. Or they'll say, candidly, we're not super great at that, but here's what we're doing and here's where it falls apart. And so if I can take all of the data that I've collected from all of the people that are doing it differently or doing something different than what I know, then I can put that into what we're doing and say like, these are common things that other people are doing. Should we be doing something like it? Or this part isn't working. Could I have someone just give me insight on this part? Like, why is this not working? And the other thing I think we do really well is we bring the whole team together, which we're a small team, so that's easy to do. But we bring you guys in on marketing when you're not really technically part of the marketing team, right? But you guys are very smart, driven people. So if you have a great idea, I want to hear it. And I think we're just open to bringing people who aren't necessarily part of that team or part of the person that does that job on a daily basis, bringing them in and saying, what would you do if you were me?
That example is powerful because we're not saying bring in all the people all the time, but at the right time. And I think there's moments too as a team when you realize, this, we've tried it, we're not hitting it. I love the clarity. To your point, if it's, hey, a group says we're not very good at this thing. Honestly, we've tried it 3 times or 5 times, and we're still not doing it. We're still not meeting our mark. Are we wasting our time, or do we need some additional help from the outside? I think that tends to be when a lot of people pull us in also, right? They're like, we did the leadership book study and we were really excited, and then nothing changed. We have a goal. We want to grow and change our culture and support our team and have more moments that lead to pit stop crews solving alongside us internally and externally, but we don't know how to get there. And so sometimes it's just helping frame that right question or, meet them where they are. One of my favorite quotes, I think I've shared this on the podcast before, is to become interesting, be interested. And so I think whether you're internal or external, that's a huge piece of it, right? If you've worked with someone that comes to you and they just say, I know everything you need to do, this is what you should do. Like, all healthcare is essentially the same. All leadership styles are essentially the same. That's why there's fundamental principles why pit crew people and doctors can work together, because people fundamentally are the same. And here's my prescription for everything you're going to do next. You won't have a lot of engagement, right? But in this story, the pit stop crew with Ferrari got so interested with these doctors, they invited the doctors to literally go to Italy and look at these videos with them. So the vulnerability of being a physician and a medical team saying, look at our process. While we're watching you, look at our process. We joke on a podcast, nobody loves to hear the sound of their own voice, really. And if they do, they need deep therapy and help. But to the vulnerability
Hey now.
Okay. Hey now. Yeah. Unless you're a professional musician, have a history of making a beautiful sound with your voice. So to take your very intimate work and have non-medical people review it, really says a lot. I actually value your expertise, not because you're a medical professional, but because you're very good at looking at process. And so knowing the piece of it, that buy-in, and then literally being invited, I bet that meant a lot. I bet they were more willing to listen to the pit crew from Ferrari who would say no to that? You're invited to go tour Ferrari and then be with the pit crew themselves, right? But that's kind of that mutual buy-in. And we already spoke to how do you build that if it's not life and death? There's a lot of ways to do that, but I think that is a piece of that experience.
Yeah. And you also, when you were talking about this, reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. And it is, if you want to go faster, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. And so I think it's that sort of I could solve this problem by myself and it would be fine. And I would get there and it would be done. But if I want to do it really well, I need to bring in others. I need to see other perspectives and I need to collaborate with other humans. And we're going to come up with something better if we do it together. And I think that's a big part of what they did with this pit crew. They said, let's bring in other people and explore other ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'm hearing us say crowdsource your ideas. And again, that doesn't mean you have to spill all your organizational guts, but who else is doing something like this and what could you learn from them? And don't forget that you have people on your team who probably have perspective. This reminded me of a kind of a case study that we have at People Centric of a hospital that we worked with. And again, it is a little bit of a life and death example as they were having really poor sepsis compliance, which I won't get into what sepsis is on this podcast, but you can Google it if you don't know. It is very life or death. It is a reason that a lot of people die during a hospital stay. And their compliance to their own sepsis processes was not great. And again, they had the team that normally works in those units and doing it, looking at it, they got stuck. For lack of a better phrase, they got stuck and they couldn't find another way to solve it. And so we said, yeah, well, what if you brought in a group of employees just inside your own company who have different skill sets, different levels of experience, and have been with your organization for different lengths of time, so very different tenures. And let's put this problem in front of a group of your peers, essentially. So again, it took that humility and vulnerability we've talking about for that team to admit they were stuck. But then let's say, let's actually take this to our team because we think we do a good job of hiring really smart people. So let's use that collective intelligence inside our organization And long story short, they solved it. Their compliance is amazing now. They actually have a whole wall in their hospital now dedicated to the lives they have saved because of this. So I think it's just knowing like you probably have more brain power inside your organization that you don't remember that you have. Or like I was working with an organization 2 weeks ago that's like they're really struggling to like figure out some of their marketing and advocacy and some of those things. And we surveyed their team to ask what ideas they had, and someone on the team specifically called out like, this is what my degree is in, and I know I'm not in that department, but like I have ideas. So you may have ideas and intelligent and talent inside your organization that just honestly we all get busy and kind of forget that you have, or like you were saying, Dana, we get too attached to what people's roles are and don't think, oh, well, what if we pulled so-and-so in on the marketing project, because they honestly generally tend to like look at this differently than I do, or they have different ideas, and or it might even be someone I disagree with sometimes because they are going to approach this differently than I would.
And you also touched on something that we kind of have been talking around, but it's creating that buy-in, right? And so making sure people want to solve the problem. I think that I'll tell a story. We worked with a client one time. It was a childcare facility, and they were like, we cannot get our teachers to stop using their cell phones. We have tried everything, and we really need them to not be on their cell phones because parents will log into the cameras and they'll see their teacher just scrolling on a cell phone and the kids like, eating glue or whatever. And so they were like, we don't want this anymore. And so they've tried everything, discipline, write-ups. They tried a basket method where you come to work and you put your cell phone in the basket. And apparently people were putting like old cell phones in the basket and still using their cell phones, right? So it was a big problem. They're like, we don't know what to do. And so instead of them just creating an edict and trying to solve the problem for everybody, we brought everybody together and said, here's the problem. Here's why it's a safety issue. What would you guys want us to do to solve? How can we solve this together? And do you think it's a problem, right? And so then the teachers started talking about like, well, we could see how it looks like a problem, but here's what we're doing sometimes. And here's, so they came up with this great plan of, we're going to keep our phones in these cubbies, but we're going to step out at certain times, and another teacher's going to come in and do these things so that we can still, respond to parent emails and respond to questions about next week and all, send out emails about what's going on in the classroom. So we still have that time to do that. But another teacher is in there without their phone. So it was kind of a, we're going to solve it together. And once they did that, they no longer had an issue, right? It was everyone came together and said, okay, we see why it's a problem and we do want to fix it. So let's do it in a way that actually makes sense. So I think it's that like create the buy-in and make sure everyone understands what you're trying to solve and why you're trying to solve it. I think that's a really powerful part of change as well.
I love that, because there's also this element. I kind of have this mental picture of where you're looking whether it's policies or solutions are handed down. Anytime there's an iPhone update, I assume it always says this: there are bug fixes in this iPhone update. And I make the update happen, and we all love it or hate it for different reasons, right? But I'm not a part of it. They didn't ask me what I wanted. They didn't ask for my opinion. And now my phone has changed forever, and it's glossy and glassy now. And I look like an old person because I can't find the note that has very important information I need for this meeting I was going to have, all the things. I digress. So when you're a part of a team, though, and maybe this corporate culture, which tends to happen in an ecosystem, we used that word earlier. And I would say an ecosystem is usually when you have 250 or 300 more employees. It's big enough you can't know everyone. So you're probably more detached from lots of problems that exist. Or it can happen in a small set too, like a daycare facility. But when people in leadership have ideas and solutions for problems, and they're rolled out without either input or buy-in or really clarity about the problem they're actually trying to fix, that's when it's like, okay, if I'm just looking up at structure, boss people told me to do this, I'm going to get around it. I'm going to put my old cell phone in the basket. I'm meeting the objective. The phone is put in the basket. Whereas the real need is like, no, people need to trust us, and they're afraid their kids are not being cared for. So how do we let you have your phone time? and do that. So I love how really that's helping everyone look forward at the problem and a solution rather than just these people down below are crazy and don't care about their jobs, or those people up above are detached and don't care about my problems. It's really helping you build the real solution together.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. The buy-in is so key. And it made me also think, I think a lot of times when people are trying to solve problems, they try a bunch of different things and they also don't really understand like why it failed last time. And so like to this with the buy-in, like they're like, well, the team said they wouldn't do it, or the team just wouldn't do it. And that's the answer that we'll hear. Well, nobody would do this. No one would use the software. No one would use it. Nobody would put their phone in the basket. So that's the result of the failure is you didn't get the action, but you didn't understand why. So if they said no, why did they say no? Right. So I think that's another piece of when people get stuck that we'll see is like, they don't really understand why they failed. And I agree. A lot of times it's because they did not get buy-in for what they were trying to do. They didn't talk to people. They didn't understand even why the problem was happening, what people wanted out of that. Because I'm saying with you, Philip, every time someone runs a software update or there's an app update, they change something that I don't like. Now, I am but one tiny user in a big pool of app users. But within a company, like it might mean a lot that it impacted me negatively. It might change something significant about my daily workflows or how I communicate with clients or the team. So I also think it's really important. Like if you're really stuck and you're like, okay, I've tried that. I tried that. Like, do you really understand why you are failing and like why it's not working? Because I would say that's one thing I think in this Formula One story, they actually understood why they were failing. And like the Formula One crew helped them understand that. They're like, here's where those handoffs are messy. Here's where you guys are not sharing information. Well, here's where like, people are trying to talk over each other or doing X, Y, or Z. They really understood not just how to fix it, but like why it didn't work. And again, it's not to dive totally deep into that. I think there is like a limit to like, doing a postmortem or failure analysis. But I think sometimes when we see people, they're trying to solve it by just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then they just get a whole nother basket of ideas and then just chuck all of those out. And they're not really understanding why they're failing in the first place or why a good idea failed. Well, this has been, I think, such an interesting discussion. I've really appreciated hearing both of your perspectives and feedback on this. And I think, again, it's such a common thing. We all get stuck sometimes. So it's a good reminder of like, how do you get unstuck? And I think what I'm hearing all of us say a lot is like, don't try to do it alone. Like if you are just trying to solve a problem in isolation, that's probably your first sign that you could solve it. Maybe you do have the skills and the smarts to do it, but it would probably be better and you'll solve it either more quickly or more effectively if you're willing to use collective intelligence, bring other people's insights and opinions in. And I appreciate hearing everyone's ideas for like how you could do that. How do you do all of those things? And again, if you decide to bring in a Formula One crew to your organization, please call us. I think that would be a fantastic field trip day to be able to go do that, especially if you're going to go to Italy for it. I mean, definitely call us for that.
Also, we could be your Formula One pit crew.
I agree with that.
Right?
Too. Yeah. Philip, you said that earlier. And again, shameless plug for us because you're listening to our podcast, is like we do play this role for a lot of organizations and a lot of people. And we mentioned a couple stories of where we've helped organizations and teams do this. I mean, we have hundreds of stories of how we've helped a team actually solve a problem or get unstuck. So also like use us as your collective intelligence and resource. Like throw us a problem, try to stump the consultant. Let's see if we can figure this out together. We'd be happy to do that. So if you have a problem you're trying to solve and you're like, listen, we're really stuck. Well, I don't know. Just like send it to us. We'll reply to you for sure if you email it, and maybe we'll talk about it in a whole podcast episode and use it as an example if you give us permission to do that. But yeah, utilize our team. We like doing these kind of things. And I think we're good at it.
Think we're pretty, one of my favorite quotes from that article, this is the wrap up essentially saying, what did the Ferrari team say to the medical folks that helped them? The verdict? The transfers were shoddy, noisy, uncoordinated, with no clear leadership. So the emphasis, what this crew really helped them do, medical teamwork improvement became the urgent priority. So it wasn't that the medicine was wrong, it's that the team didn't work well together. And to your point, we are definitely the pit crew for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode. Again, send us your thoughts and ideas. Bring it to our team. We'd love to just talk with you one-on-one or over email. Or if you've got something for the podcast that you want us to try to tackle, send it our way. And thanks for listening. We'll see you back here soon.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.